everybody, and welcome back to Natalie Reads. My name is Natalie, and welcome to my mid-year series check-in. So in this video, I'm going to talk about all of the series I have read any amount of books from this year. So I've split this video into 4 or 5 categories, actually 6 it looks like. So this video is meant to break down the series and where I am in them and make sure I'm holding myself accountable to reading the series that I actually start. So the categories in this video are series I've started this year, series I've continued this year, series I've finished this year, series I am caught up to date on, series that I have reread this year, and then series that I made DNF. Now the DNF category, a lot of these series, I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to DNF, but I didn't love the first book, and I just don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series. So starting with the series that I have started this year, I have 12 series in this category. The first series in this category is the Dreamland Saga by Fonda Lee. So I read Jade City in February or March this year, and that is all I have read of this series. And in fact, to be able to continue on, I'm gonna need to reread this book because I was not in the right headspace to be reading this, but I started this series this year. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a really interesting start to the series, and I'm super excited to continue on. I don't think I'm gonna do series synopsis in this video. Next, I read the first published volume of Olympus, which is the first or so chapters. I'm not sure exactly how many. The series is also being released on Webtoons, so technically I could continue now, but I'm choosing not to. I am going to continue on with the series eventually, I just haven't been in the mood to yet, and this is like a Greek mythology inspired comic. The next series is the Brutal Birthright series, and I read the first 3 books in this series, and the first 3 books are Brutal Prince, Stolen Heir, and Savage Lover. I've read all of them and I've enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to continue on soon. Next series is Devil's Night series. I've read the first book in this series, Corrupt, and I plan to read the next book, Hideaway, very soon. This is like a dark romance series, and I super enjoyed the first book, and I'm so excited to continue on. Then I read the first book in the Flesh and Fire series, which was A Shadow in the Ember. A Flesh and Fire is part of the larger From Blood and Ash universe, but I am counting it as its own separate series. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to continue on with this series, so I put it on the continue because I did like the first book enough that there is a chance I will continue. I just don't know how strong that chance actually is. I read the first book in the Murderbot series, All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I am planning on continuing with this series. I think it's going to be one that I read very occasionally and takes me a while to get through, just read it whenever I need a sci-fi that's kind of short and snappy. I like the first book enough that I'm intrigued to continue on with the series. Then I started my reread of the Land of Stories series. I've reread the first book in the series, but I have not continued on with my reread yet, hence why it's in the started category and not in the reread category, which is for series that I've wholly reread, and I'm definitely planning on continuing my reread because I love this series. Then I started the Fallen Men series by Gianna Darling, and I read the first 3 books in this series, Lesson in Corruption, Welcome to the Dark Side, and Good Gone Bad. Super enjoyed the series. It's a motorcycle club romance series, and it's so good. I love all of the books, and I'm definitely continuing very soon. Then I reread the first 2 books in the Wayward Children series, Every Hearted Doorway and Down Among the Sticks and Bones. Similar to Murderbot, this is going to be one that I just take my time with. Anytime I need a shorter book, I'll pick it up, and eventually I will get to the books that are published, but I haven't read yet because I think I've read the first 6 books in this series or so. The next series I've started is A Song of Ice and Fire. I read the first book, Game of Thrones, and the second book, A Clash of Kings, is on my July TBR, so I should be reading that very, very soon. I've started the manga Death Note, which I've read the first volume of, and I do plan to continue on. I have the second volume out of my library, and I hope to read it soon. I read the first book in the Salacious Player series by Sarah Cat. I read Perez. I am going to continue on with this series. I'm not sure how far. I may just read the next book because I've heard really good things about that one, but I don't know how much farther from that I'll do. I've also read the first book in the Four-Horsemen trilogy, Assassin's Apprentice, which is also part of the larger realm of the Elderlings. Assassin's Apprentice is the first book in both series, and absolutely I'm going to continue on with the series. I absolutely adored the first book. Now to the series I have continued this year, which I have 4 series in. So that's not exactly a great number. First, I continued my reread of Throne of Glass. I have reached book 3 in the series now, Heir of Fire, and I need to read Queen of Shadows next. I read book 3 in the Blitz series playbook. I read that earlier in the year. I haven't quite continued with the series yet. Since then, I have one book left, so I'll definitely be knocking that out this year. I continued on with my read of the Hercules Perez series by Agatha Christie, and I made it up to book 11, which is 3-Act Tragedy. This is another series I am taking very slow, reading only whenever I'm in the mood for an Agatha Christie book, so this one is going to take me a while to get through. And then I've read so many volumes of One Piece. At the time of filming this video, I think I'm at volume 45, but I'm definitely going to finish this series this year, or I'll get caught up this year. I have finished 3 series this year. I read in its entirety the To Love and Hate companion novels, which is To Love Jason Thorne and To Hate Adam Connor. These books were mid. I'd say they were okay, nothing fabulous. I actually really didn't like To Hate Adam Connor, so I guess a little below average. I read in its entirety the Four Horsemen series by Laura Glasgow. These were just nice books that were easy to binge one after another. They did get a little bit repetitive as I went on, but they were enjoyable for what I needed. And then I finished the Maid series by Daniel Laurie, and I read The Darkest Temptation, which was the last book I needed to read in that trilogy, which is like a mafia trilogy. Actually, I have one other series to add to this section of the video because it's being moved from the cut up section, because since I made my original list, the 4th book in the series has come out and I have read it, and that is the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I read Twisted Lies, which came out on July 30th. Hi, I just wanted to pop in to say I completely forgot to mention in the video, but this year I'd also read Twisted Hate, which was the 3rd book in the series. So I didn't just read Twisted Lies this year, I read the 3rd and the 4th book in this series, and I loved it, and I am now done with the series. Now moving on to series I am caught up with. The first one is King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the first book in the Adrian and Isol trilogy. I don't know how to say her name. And the second book comes out very soon, I think, but it's not quite out yet. So I'm currently caught up with this series. It's not my favorite series, but I do enjoy it, so I'm definitely going to read the second book. I also read the first book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy series, I don't know what to call it, by Stephanie Garber. The second book in this series comes out in September, I want to say, and I read this book earlier this year. I really enjoyed it. Stephanie Garber is a favorite author of mine, so it was nice to read this and be back in the world of Carnival. I also reread Hidden Legacy series up to what has been published. The 6th book in it is coming out this year, so I am caught up in that series. Well, technically I already was, but I reread it again this year. Now for the series that are finished and I completely reread them. First is the For The Game Trilogy by Nora, I don't know how to say her last name. This is a favorite series of mine. It's a guilty pleasure, new adult sports romance series that, I don't know, I just love this series, so I reread it at the beginning of the year. I also reread the first trilogy in the School for Good and Evil series. I'm gonna count this as 2 separate trilogies. So I finished the first trilogy. There is a second trilogy that's kind of following the same characters, but it happens like a year later and it's a completely different storyline. So I'm gonna call it a different series, but I completely reread the first 3 books in this world. Those were all the rereads. And then finally, the series I may DNF. I'm not 100% sure yet. So first is the Dreamland Billionaire series by Laura Asher. I read the first book, whatever it's called. There's a picture of it here, I'm sure. And I just was like, about it. I've heard that the second book is better, but I just don't know if I care enough to continue on with this series. With how many books there are out there, I just don't know if this one's that important to read. Same with the Vicious Lost Boys series. I read the first book, The Never King, a month ago, 2 months ago about, and it was fine and I'm mildly intrigued to continue on, and it's like, okay, the second book is short, but like the first book wasn't that good and there are so many other books that I want to read, so I don't know if this one is just worth me reading, so I'm not sure about that one. Palace Insiders by Lucy Parker. I know I will not be continuing because one series I know for sure I will not be continuing is Palace Insiders by Lucy Parker because I despised the first book in the series, Battle Royal. I think it is my least favorite book of the year. So I'm definitely not going to continue on with the series. I do not care. Another series by Lauren Asher that I just don't know if I'm going to continue is Dirty Air. This is like an F1 romance. I read the first book, Throttled, earlier this year, and you know, it was fine. It was a good time. I just don't know how intrigued I am to continue on with the rest of the series. I would say out of Lauren Asher's series, this is probably the one that I am most likely to continue, but I still just don't know how high the chances of that happening are. And then the final book to talk about in this video, the final series is the Long Shot series. I read the first book, Hoops earlier this year. I didn't have a great reading experience with this book because it was not what I expected. This book is super dark and emotional, and look up trigger warnings, and for most of it it's hard to even call it a romance because of what's happening. It's not that I didn't like it. It was actually a good book. It just wasn't what I was expecting, and it wasn't what I wanted. So I don't know if I want to read the rest of the books in the series because I don't know if they're the same tone as this book was, if that makes sense. So it's not something that I'm jumping to continue on with the series. I could possibly continue on, but I'm definitely not making any promises. So those are all the series I've read books of in this year. Hopefully I didn't miss any. I have a spreadsheet that I was looking at, so I'm going to be really sad if I did. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Down below will be links to all of the series I talked about in this video, as well as my Bookstagram and my Goodreads if you want to follow me there. Subscribe to see more content from me, and I'll see y'all in my next video very soon. Bye!